The kingdom of Therion lay under a blanket of mist, a gray twilight that never fully faded. Towering mountains encircled the land like ancient sentinels, their peaks shrouded in clouds that glowed faintly under the moonlight. Below, the villages clung to the edges of the valleys, fragile against the shadow of a ruler who was said to be stronger than any man, taller than any tower, and feared by all who drew breath. They called him the Alpha King, and none dared to cross his path. No woman had ever dared stand before him. Stories whispered through the villages of his golden eyes that burned like molten sunlight and hands that could crush stone. Mothers held their daughters close and warned them never to enter the mountains. Yet the villagers also spoke in hushed tones of a loneliness that clung to him like a second skin, a sorrow hidden beneath the giant's strength and the roar of his authority. Leora, an Omega born under the silvered light of a crescent moon, lived on the edge of the kingdom, in a small cottage, surrounded by wildflowers and murmuring streams. Unlike the women of the villages, she did not bend to fear alone. She had courage, yes, but also a rare gift. She could feel the hidden emotions of others, sense their unspoken pain or longing, and sometimes sway them with the quietest touch of her own heart. It was a secret she protected fiercely, for fear often made people cruel, and the Alpha King was cruel to those who approached him uninvited. On the night of the Festival of Twilight, the villages gathered in the square, their torches flickering against the encroaching darkness. Leora stood at the back, her dark hair braided over one shoulder, her eyes sharp with observation. Music filled the air. A haunting melody played on flutes and strings, yet beneath the songs, a tension hummed. The Alpha King had decreed that he would appear, as he did every year, to remind the people of his dominion. When he arrived, the ground seemed to tremble with his steps. The Alpha King was vast, a mountain of a man whose presence swallowed the square whole. His golden eyes scanned the villagers, and a silence fell like a stone over the crowd. Mothers pulled their children close. Men straightened their spines, their faces pale. Leora felt her pulse quicken, yet she did not shrink. There was fear, yes, but also something else. Something she could not name. The king spoke only once, his voice deep and resonant, carrying through the square as if the mountains themselves were echoing his words. Your fear sustains me. Your obedience pleases me. Forget not who rules these lands. And with that, he turned, his gaze briefly resting on Leora. She felt it like a hammer against her chest, not pain, exactly, but a force that tested her courage. She met his eyes, steady, unwavering. A murmur rippled through the crowd. No woman had ever looked back. They whispered her name, half in warning, half in awe. Leora's heart pounded in her chest, a rhythm of defiance and something she could not yet understand. Later that night, Leora could not sleep. The moon hung low over the mountains, silver and watchful. She wandered to the edge of the stream near her cottage, her reflection shimmering in the water. The image of the Alpha King haunted her, not as a monster to fear, but as a figure burdened by something deeper. And in the darkness of the night, Leora made a decision, a dangerous, bold choice. She would step forward. She would approach him. The journey to the mountains was treacherous. The path wound between jagged cliffs and forests, where shadows moved like living things. Leora walked with only the light of the moon to guide her. At times, she felt eyes on her from the darkness, whispers that seemed to drift through the trees. Yet she pressed on. Fear was there, of course. It curled around her like smoke, but she would not let it claim her. By the time she reached the gates of the citadel, the night was deep and silent. The fortress itself was carved from the living rock, its spires reaching toward the clouds, bathed in an eerie glow. Torchlight flickered along the walls, revealing statues of warriors frozen in battle, their faces twisted in valor and anguish. Leora's hand trembled as she touched the gate, a small touch, but one full of intention. She could feel the pulse of power behind the stone, the presence of the king, massive and undiminished even within his walls. A voice broke the silence, low, resonant, and impossibly commanding. "Who dares approach the Alpha King?" Leora took a deep breath. "I am Leora," she said, her voice calm despite the storm of her own racing heart. "I have come to see him." For a moment, there was nothing but the sound of the wind. And then, a shadow moved above her. The gates parted silently, revealing the Alpha King in full, towering, immense, his golden eyes glowing in the torchlight. He studied her with a curiosity no one had ever dared invoke. "You are brave," he said, his voice almost soft, a contrast to the power he radiated. "Or foolish. Perhaps both." "I am not afraid," Leora replied, though her pulse hammered in her ears. "I wish only to speak." The king studied her again, silence stretching like a rope between them. Then, unexpectedly, he stepped aside. "Come," he said, and the gates closed silently behind her. Inside, the citadel was both magnificent and foreboding. Halls of black stone stretched above, lit by torchlight that danced along the walls. Tapestries depicted the kingdom's history, battles waged and won, and a solitary figure at the center, the Alpha King himself. Leora walked carefully, each step echoing in the vast chamber. "You feel it," the king said, more statement than question. "Do you know what it is you sense in me?" Leora's gaze met his. "I see more than strength," she said softly. "I see the loneliness, the burden you carry, the sorrow no one dares speak of." For a heartbeat, the Alpha King was silent. Then, his lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "No woman has ever said that," he murmured. "Most would flee before their eyes even touched me." "I am not most women," Leora said. And for the first time in decades, perhaps centuries, the Alpha King did not roar. He did not strike fear into her. Instead, he regarded her with something that resembled curiosity, interest, recognition. And in that instant, the fortress did not feel so cold. The shadows did not feel so thick. But even as the walls held them, danger lingered. The mountains beyond were alive with old magic, whispers of curses and enemies that longed to see the Alpha King fall. And Leora knew that stepping into his world was only the beginning. Her courage had brought her here, but it had also set the stage for trials she could not yet imagine. The Alpha King turned, gesturing for her to follow deeper into the citadel. "Few survive it with their hearts intact, but perhaps you will." Leora followed, her mind alight with questions, and her heart alight with a strange, unfamiliar warmth. She did not know what awaited her in the shadow of the king, nor did she know what would awaken in her own heart. But she had taken the first step, and there was no turning back. Outside, the mist rolled over the mountains like a living thing. Inside, the Alpha King and the Omega walked silently through the halls of stone, a spark of something new beginning to stir an unspoken connection, fragile, yet undeniable, that neither fear nor legend could easily destroy. And somewhere deep in the night, beyond the walls of the citadel, the wind carried a whisper of fate, a warning that their story had only just begun. The citadel of the Alpha King loomed like a dark jewel atop the mountains, its black stone walls absorbing every flicker of torchlight. Leora followed silently through the halls, her steps cautious, yet steady. Every echo of her footfall seemed magnified in the vast chambers, and the tension in the air hummed like a living thing. She felt it, the pulse of the king's presence beside her, immense and powerful, yet strangely restless. "You are far braver than I expected," the Alpha King said, his deep voice rolling through the corridor. His golden eyes, sharp and unyielding, studied her with a mixture of curiosity and something unreadable. Or perhaps you are simply foolish. Only one of these keeps you alive. I do not fear you, Leora replied, her voice steady, though her heart thudded in her chest. I am not here to fight. I am here to understand. The king's expression softened ever so slightly, a flicker that disappeared almost as quickly as it appeared. Understanding is a dangerous thing in my halls, he said. It often leads to pain. They entered a great chamber, its ceiling vaulted high above, lined with tapestries depicting battles and kings long dead. Shadows danced along the walls as torches flickered, and Leora's eyes were drawn to a throne carved from obsidian stone, enormous and foreboding. The king gestured for her to sit, though she hesitated. You may sit, he said finally, but know this: nothing here is as it seems. Fear is easy to provoke. Courage is rare. Leora took a seat on a smaller bench opposite the throne. From this distance, she could feel the king's presence, like a storm pressing toward her. Yet beneath that storm, she sensed something else, a quiet loneliness, a yearning for connection that no one had dared approach. Her gift, the rare ability to sense emotions, told her that the Alpha King carried a burden deeper than strength, deeper than the fear he inspired. You feel it, he said, almost as if reading her mind. Do you sense the darkness in me? I do, Leora said softly. But I also feel pain, loneliness, a longing for something lost. The king's golden eyes narrowed, and a tension, sharp as a blade, cut through the air. Few can see beyond the power. Even fewer would dare acknowledge the sorrow beneath it. You are not like them. I am not like most, she said, her voice quiet but firm. I have never feared the truth, no matter how dangerous it is. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then the king's expression shifted, a flicker of something almost human appearing in his immense features. Perhaps you are meant to see what no one else can, he murmured. Perhaps you are meant for more than this kingdom's fear. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Leora's heart raced. This was no simple invitation. It was an acknowledgement that she had touched something inside him, something no one else had dared to reach. And she knew that touching it had consequences she could not yet imagine. Days passed in the citadel like a suspended dream. Leora was given quarters within the fortress, a small room overlooking the mountains, where mist rolled through the valleys like a living river. She spent her hours exploring the halls, learning the history of the king and his realm. And slowly, she began to understand the depth of his isolation. The Alpha King, for all his immense presence, was not cruel to her. He watched her, tested her, and occasionally, he spoke with a sharpness that reminded her of the world outside. Yet there were moments when he revealed glimpses of vulnerability, a sigh that echoed in the halls, a glance at the moonlight, the soft exhale of a man weary of his own power. One evening, as Leora walked along the edge of the citadel balcony, the wind whipping her hair around her face, the king appeared beside her. His shadow fell long and dark across the stone floor. You are not afraid, he said, his voice low, almost intimate. I am not many, she said simply. I face fear because it can teach us truths we cannot see otherwise. The king's gaze lingered on her, intense and unyielding. And what truths have you seen so far? I have seen that you are more than the stories say, she said, her eyes meeting his. That beneath the strength, there is a man who bears a burden he cannot share. That you are lonely. For a heartbeat, the king said nothing. Then quietly, he spoke. No one has ever said such things to me. No one has ever seen me like this. And in that moment, something fragile and powerful began to stir between them. A bond, neither fully understood, a mixture of curiosity, tension, and unspoken longing. But their growing connection did not go unnoticed. The citadel was steeped in ancient magic, and with magic came danger. Leora soon discovered that a shadow lingered in the mountains beyond an enemy long thought vanquished, an old curse that fed on fear and sought to undo everything the king had built. One night, as a storm raged outside, the king summoned Leora to the inner hall. The wind howled through the battlements, and lightning split the sky. "They are coming," he said, his voice tight with controlled fury. "An enemy from the old days. They seek to claim this kingdom and destroy all who dwell within it. And you are part of this now." Leora's heart leapt, but she did not falter. "I will face them," she said. "Whatever comes, I will stand with you." The king's eyes, golden and fierce, studied her. "Few would say that," he murmured. "Fewer still would mean it." The next days were a trial of courage. Leora and the king trained together, her empathy-guided abilities helping to sense the enemy's moves, his unmatched strength shielding them from physical threats. Their interactions were charged with tension moments where trust was tested, where each step toward understanding the other seemed as dangerous as facing a foe. In those moments, Leora felt a strange warmth when the king's hand brushed hers, a fleeting touch that carried more meaning than words could express. And the king, for the first time in decades, felt a stirring of something unfamiliar. Not fear, not desire alone, but the fragile beginnings of connection, trust, and perhaps redemption. Yet the shadows of the mountains held more than just physical threats. Leora's past, a secret she had hidden even from herself, began to surface. She sensed it in the whispers of the wind, in the shiver of the citadel stones, in the way the king's eyes darkened when certain names or events were mentioned. There were forces at work beyond her comprehension, threads of destiny and magic that threatened to unravel both her and the Alpha King. One night, the king took her to the highest tower, the storm raging below them, the lightning illuminating his immense figure. "You have chosen to come here, knowing the danger," he said, his voice almost a growl. "You have chosen to stand in the heart of shadows." "Why?" "Because it is right," Leora said, her voice strong, though her heart ached with uncertainty. "Because I feel that I am meant to be here, that I can help, and that you need someone who sees the truth, not just fear." The king's gaze softened, and for the first time, he allowed a vulnerability to show. "Few ever offer truth," he said. "Most offer fear. Most would run." "I will not run," she said. "I will stay, no matter what comes." As they stood together, lightning illuminating the dark citadel, a shadow emerged from the storm outside, a figure cloaked in darkness, carrying the scent of old magic and malice. Leora and the king prepared, side by side, their hearts racing, their bond tested as danger pressed close. The enemy struck with cunning and power, and Leora felt her abilities stretched to their limits, sensing the emotions, the fear, the hidden intentions. She reached toward the king, connecting to him in a way she had not yet dared, guiding him, strengthening him, sharing her courage with him. For a moment, they were one in purpose and in heart. The king's immense power, combined with Leora's insight, created a force neither had known they could wield. Together, they held the intruder at bay, their connection solidifying into something both delicate and unbreakable. But even as the enemy retreated, a whisper of a darker truth lingered in the air. Leora's past, a secret tied to an ancient curse, had been discovered, and the Alpha King, despite his immense strength, could not shield her from the consequences that were coming. They stood atop the tower, rain pouring down, lightning crackling around them, and the weight of destiny pressing close. The bond between Alpha and Omega had begun, fierce and fragile, powerful yet vulnerable. And in the heart of the storm, one truth was undeniable. The dance of shadows and desire had only just begun. The storm had passed, leaving the mountains shrouded in mist and silence. From the tower of the citadel, Leora and the Alpha King surveyed the kingdom below. The air was thick with tension, yet beneath it, an unfamiliar warmth had begun to settle between them. A bond forged not just in courage, but in understanding, trust, and shared vulnerability. Leora's thoughts were heavy. The shadow from her past, the curse that had been whispered about in the wind and hidden in the folds of the mountains, threatened everything. She could feel it now, coiling around her heart. A chill that no fire could warm. Yet the king's presence beside her brought strength she had never known. He did not speak much, but his golden eyes, calm and steady, communicated more than words could. "You are thinking too much," the king said finally, his deep voice cutting through the morning fog. "Worrying will not protect you. Only action can do that." "I know," Leora replied, her voice quiet. "But I cannot ignore it. The danger, it is tied to me. And if I falter, you could be harmed." The king turned to her, his massive hand brushing her arm with a tenderness that contrasted with his immense strength. "Then we face it together," he said. "No one stands alone in my halls who has chosen to be here. And you have chosen." For the first time, Leora felt the full weight of the Alpha King's humanity. He was more than the stories said, more than the fear he inspired. Beneath the power, beneath the towering form and the golden gaze, there was a man burdened by a curse, by solitude, by the fear that no one could ever reach him. And for the first time, she saw the possibility of breaking that loneliness, of giving him something he had never dared to hope for. Trust, companionship, and perhaps love. The first trial came swiftly. The mountains themselves seemed to rise against them, as though the very land sought to test their bond. A rift opened in the valley below, releasing a creature of shadows and smoke, a remnant of the ancient curse that haunted the kingdom. It moved like a living storm, a twisting darkness that consumed light and hope. The king stepped forward, immense and unyielding, his presence a shield against the darkness. "Stay close," he commanded, and Leora moved beside him, her heart steady, her gift alive. She reached into the storm of emotion surrounding the creature, feeling its rage, its pain, its endless hunger. She sought the kernel of fear beneath it, the hidden wound that drove its destruction. Together, they moved as one. The king's strength clashed with the darkness in raw, physical power, while Leora guided him, her touch, her voice, and her heart steering him toward the center of the shadow. "It is afraid," she said, her voice calm amidst the chaos. "It seeks to protect something it has lost. There is still a choice here." The king's eyes narrowed, and with a roar that shook the mountains, he struck a blow that seemed to rend the darkness itself. And yet, it did not vanish entirely. Leora stepped forward, her hands glowing faintly with the energy of her empathy, reaching into the heart of the creature. She touched it, not with force, but with understanding, and in that instant, the storm seemed to hesitate. "You cannot fight this with strength alone," she whispered. "It can be calmed. It can be healed." For a moment, the darkness wavered, then recoiled, and with the king's guidance and Leora's touch, it dissolved into mist, leaving behind silence and the faint scent of rain. The mountains seemed to exhale, and the citadel stood unbroken. The king lowered his massive frame to the ground, breathing hard. Yet his eyes sought Leora with something intense, something that had never been there before. You are remarkable," he said softly. "No one has ever faced the shadows with me like this. No one has ever, truly, reached me." Leora felt a warmth in her chest, a mixture of relief and something far deeper. "We faced it together," she said. "We are stronger together." And in that moment, the Alpha King understood the truth he had long denied. That strength without connection was hollow, and that courage paired with compassion was the mightiest force of all. Yet the trials were not over. Leora's past, long hidden even from herself, had begun to manifest. A vision struck her during the quiet of the night, fragments of a life she had buried, moments that had shaped her, fears she had never faced. The shadow that had pursued her was not just a remnant of ancient magic. It was tied to her own lineage, a family secret that held the power to unravel the kingdom's fragile peace. "You must tell me," the king said one evening as they stood on the balcony, the stars stretching across the night sky like silver threads. "What haunts you?" Leora hesitated, then spoke, her voice low but steady. She told him of her family, of a betrayal long ago, of a curse whispered in old songs that sought to claim her heart, and, by extension, the kingdom. The king listened in silence, his golden eyes unblinking. When she finished, he reached for her hand, his touch grounding her, giving her courage she had not known she possessed. "No matter what your past holds," he said, "it does not define you. You are here, with me. That is what matters." The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that lifted the darkness from her heart. Leora realized that trust, once given, could heal wounds deeper than any spell or sword. And the king, who had known fear as power, began to understand that vulnerability was not weakness, it was the key to true strength. The final confrontation came at dawn. From the shadows of the mountains, the remnants of the curse emerged, more potent and terrifying than before. The king stood tall, his presence a beacon of power. Yet it was Leora who stepped forward first, her gift radiating through her very being. She reached into the heart of the threat, weaving calm and courage into the chaos, drawing on every ounce of strength the bond between them had forged. The battle was fierce. Darkness clashed with light, shadow with heart. And yet through it all, Leora and the king moved as one. He struck with immense force, guided by her insight, while she touched the unseen, bending the emotional currents of fear and rage toward stillness. Together, they overcame the enemy, dissolving the curse into nothingness, leaving only the rising sun to illuminate the valley below. Exhausted but unbroken, they stood together on the citadel walls, their hands clasped, their eyes meeting in a gaze that spoke of something beyond words. They had faced fear, darkness, and the weight of destiny, and they had emerged not just victorious, but transformed. "You have changed me," the king said, his voice low, almost reverent. "No one has ever done this. No one has ever seen me, as I truly am. And you have changed me," Leora said softly. "I was afraid once, but no longer. I see now that courage is not the absence of fear. It is standing with someone through it." For the first time, the Alpha King smiled fully, a warmth that reached his eyes and softened the massive lines of his face. The citadel, the mountains, even the kingdom itself seemed to exhale, as if acknowledging the bond that had formed. Days passed, and the kingdom began to change as well. Fear gave way to respect, and the people who had once trembled under the shadow of the Alpha King now saw a ruler tempered by courage and compassion. Leora's presence beside him became a symbol not of dominance, but of partnership, trust, and the quiet power of understanding. At night, when the world was still, Leora and the king would walk along the battlements, speaking in whispers, sharing their thoughts and dreams. The bond between them grew stronger with each passing day, a connection forged in fire, shadow, and the shared understanding of heart and soul. And though their journey was far from over, other threats lingered, mysteries still hidden in the mountains, and the world beyond the citadel was never truly safe. They knew one truth above all. Together, they could face anything. The Alpha King, once feared and alone, had found an equal, a partner, and something far greater than power alone. Love tempered by courage, trust, and redemption. From the highest tower of the citadel, they gazed upon the kingdom bathed in morning light. The mountains stretched endlessly beyond, the mists curling like memories of the past. But the bond they shared was stronger than any shadow. The Alpha King and the Omega, once strangers bound by courage, now stood united, a testament to the strength found not in fear or force, but in connection, empathy, and love. And as the first rays of the sun touched the citadel walls, casting golden light over the black stone, both knew that while the world might still hold challenges, their hearts had found a home in each other. The story of fear and legend had given way to one of trust, redemption, and the enduring power of a bond, forged in darkness, but destined to shine.